awareness is the beginning of all transformation. Most people move through life unaware of the invisible strings that pull their emotions, their decisions, and even their sense of self-worth. A narcissist thrives in that lack of awareness. They manipulate through subtle words, calculated silence, and an endless cycle of giving and taking back until the person they target forgets who they truly are. The reason this works is simple. When you are unaware, you can be controlled. When you do not recognize the game being played, you remain a player on someone else's board, living by rules you did not design. But the moment you open your eyes and begin to see the pattern, the entire power dynamic begins to shift. The spell breaks, and what once looked like love or care reveals itself for what it always was: control. Awareness is not simply knowing that something is wrong. It is the piercing clarity that allows you to step back and observe the truth without excuses, without minimizing, without brushing it aside. When you become aware of the ways a narcissist tries to feed on your energy, you no longer supply what they need. You realize that their validation is not a treasure but a trap. Their approval is not a gift but a chain. The more clearly you see this, the less power they hold. And that realization alone is terrifying to a narcissist, because their greatest fear is a strong woman who cannot be fooled, cannot be silenced, and cannot be bent into submission. Awareness begins in small moments. It is in that instant when you catch yourself doubting your worth because of someone else's words and you pause to ask, is this really true? It is in that second when you notice the pattern repeating again. The grand promises followed by the cruel withdrawal, the affection followed by criticism, the praise followed by punishment. At first, these realizations feel uncomfortable, even painful, because they force you to face the fact that what you thought was love was never love at all. But discomfort is the birthplace of strength. To become aware is to step into a higher state of consciousness where manipulation loses its grip. There is a kind of power that comes from awareness which no one can ever take away. When you see the game clearly, you can choose not to play. When you notice the hook, you can decide not to bite. It doesn't mean the narcissist will stop trying. In fact, they will often try harder when they sense their influence slipping. But your awareness becomes a shield. It allows you to observe their tactics without being consumed by them. You begin to recognize gaslighting for what it is: desperate attempt to rewrite your reality. You see silent treatments not as a punishment you deserve, but as a tactic to provoke fear. And once you name these strategies, they lose their mystery. They lose their ability to confuse you. They lose their sting. Awareness also brings back something far greater than protection. It brings back choice. When you were unaware, choices felt limited. You felt trapped, cornered, as if your entire existence was tied to pleasing someone else. But when you see clearly, doors open. You start to realize you are not bound by anyone's approval, that you do not need to shrink yourself to keep the peace, that your life can expand beyond the limits someone else has placed around you. This awareness leads to empowerment, because suddenly you can envision another path, one where your strength is not a threat but a gift, one where your voice is not silenced but amplified, one where your energy is not drained but directed toward building your future. And here is the most profound part: awareness is irreversible. Once you see, you cannot unsee. Once you awaken to the truth, you cannot go back to the illusions that held you captive. The same words that once pierced you lose their effect. The same manipulations that once made you question yourself now sound hollow. And that shift is permanent. It may take time to fully embody it, but the seed of awareness, once planted, grows roots that cannot be pulled out. The narcissist senses this, and that is why they fear it so deeply. They fear the woman who sees through them, who refuses to give her energy away, who has reclaimed her power through the light of awareness. Because once you know, you are no longer a source of supply. You are a force of your own. Awareness is not just intellectual, it is deeply spiritual. It awakens you to the truth that your worth never came from anyone else. It was never dependent on their recognition, their praise, or their acceptance. It was always yours. The only reason you forgot was because you were led to believe otherwise. And now, as you grow aware, you reconnect with that truth. You remember who you were before the manipulation, before the doubt, before the constant questioning of your own reality. You begin to rebuild from that place of knowing, and every step you take forward reinforces the power you hold within. When you cultivate awareness, you also begin to notice not just the narcissist's behavior, but your own patterns. The ways you responded, the times you stayed silent when you wanted to speak, the times you gave when you were empty. This self-awareness is not about blame. It is about reclaiming your ability to choose differently. It is about honoring the fact that you can now see clearly. And because you see clearly, you can act differently. This is how cycles break. This is how generations shift. This is how a strong woman rises, not by force alone, but by the quiet, unwavering power of awareness that turns confusion into clarity, fear into strength, and control into freedom. A narcissist survives on the energy of others, and the primary way they obtain that energy is through approval and validation. They study the people around them, they sense the need for recognition, and they feed it just enough to keep you hooked. This is why so many women find themselves trapped in a cycle that feels impossible to break. Because the narcissist's greatest weapon is not physical, it is psychological. They condition you to believe that your worth is measured by their reaction to you. If they smile, you feel good. If they withdraw, you feel empty. If they praise you, you feel enough. If they criticize, you collapse into shame. And slowly, almost invisibly, your entire sense of self becomes tied to their opinion. But the truth is, this dependency only exists as long as you place external approval above internal strength. The moment you shift your focus inward, the entire structure collapses. There is a vast difference between strength that depends on others and strength that rises from within. When you seek approval from someone who thrives on control, you hand them the keys to your life. You become addicted to their moments of kindness, blind to the fact that those moments are calculated to keep you dependent. They give you a taste, then take it away. They make you feel special, then tear you down. This push and pull is not random. It is the design. It keeps you chasing, trying harder, giving more, until you forget that you ever had value apart from their judgment. This is where so many lose themselves. In the endless chase for validation that will never be consistent, because consistency would mean freedom. But there is another way. Inner strength is not loud. It does not always announce itself, but it is unshakable. Inner strength is the quiet knowing that you are enough regardless of who sees it or who refuses to see it. It is the anchor that holds you steady when the narcissist tries to spin the ground beneath you. When you begin to draw from within instead of reaching outward, you starve the narcissist of their greatest power over you. They cannot control what no longer needs them. They cannot break what is rooted in self-belief. They cannot silence what no longer asks for permission to speak. This shift is not easy, because for years you may have been conditioned to believe that love is earned by pleasing, that worth is proven by sacrifice, that value is measured by another's response. It takes courage to pause and question those beliefs. It takes strength to say, what if my worth was never theirs to define? And when you begin to answer that question honestly, a new kind of freedom opens up. You start to realize that the very foundation of your life can be rebuilt, not on the shaky ground of external approval, but on the rock-solid truth of who you are. Think of how powerful this is. A woman who no longer seeks validation from a narcissist is untouchable. Their criticism no longer wounds in the same way, because she no longer accepts their words as truth. Their silence no longer terrifies her, because she has built peace within herself. Their praise no longer intoxicates her, because she recognizes it as bait, not love. This is why narcissists fear strong women. Because a strong woman who knows her worth is beyond control. She is no longer playing their game. Building inner strength is a practice. It is not about pretending to be unbothered or wearing a mask of toughness. It is about doing the deeper work of reconnecting to your own value. It is about setting boundaries not from anger but from clarity. It is about learning to listen to your own intuition instead of silencing it. It is about choosing to honor your needs without shame. Each time you do this, you send yourself a message that you matter. And each time you reinforce that message, the grip of external validation loosens. Slowly, the chains break. Slowly, you begin to stand taller, not because anyone told you to, but because you remembered how. When your strength comes from within, it radiates outward in ways that cannot be hidden. People notice it in your posture, in your voice, in the way you no longer rush to explain yourself or justify your choices. You move differently because you no longer walk on eggshells. You speak differently because you no longer dilute your truth. You live differently because you are no longer waiting for permission to take up space. And this energy is magnetic, not because you are trying to prove anything, but because authenticity is the most powerful force of all. A narcissist depends on the illusion that you need them to feel whole. They carefully cultivate that illusion because it ensures their control. But once you build inner strength, the illusion shatters. You realize that everything they tried to make you chase was something you already carried within you. Love, acceptance, value. All of it was yours to claim, not theirs to grant. And as this awareness grows, their attempts to control you become almost transparent. What once held you captive begins to look small, powerless, even desperate. The beauty of inner strength is that it does not only free you from one toxic relationship, it transforms every area of your life. When you stop depending on external approval, you stop shrinking yourself in any environment. You no longer feel the need to meet unrealistic expectations, to silence your voice in meetings, to compromise your dreams for acceptance. You step into spaces with the quiet confidence of someone who knows they belong, not because anyone else says so, but because they have claimed it for themselves. This is the greatest fear of every narcissist, that the woman they once controlled will rise so powerfully in her own worth that she no longer looks back. That she will no longer bend, no longer beg, no longer doubt. That she will stop chasing and start creating. That her strength will no longer be conditional on their presence, but unconditional in her essence. When inner strength becomes her foundation, she becomes the one thing they cannot defeat, free, unshakable, and whole. For many people who have lived under the shadow of a narcissist, life feels like a constant state of survival. Every day becomes about reading moods, predicting reactions, avoiding conflict, and trying to manage the unpredictable swings of someone else's behavior. It is exhausting, draining, and it leaves little room for anything else. The mind becomes wired to anticipate rather than create, to endure rather than imagine, to get through the day rather than design a future. This is how the narcissist keeps control, by keeping you so busy surviving their storms that you forget you have the power to build a life beyond them. But the moment you begin to shift your mindset from survival to creation, everything changes. Survival is reactive. It is about what is happening to you, what is being done to you, what you must endure. It is built on fear and scarcity. You think, if I just do this, maybe they won't get angry. Or, if I just give more, maybe they will finally love me the way I need. Survival keeps you running in circles, always adjusting, always adapting, never arriving. It convinces you that life is happening outside of your control, and your only role is to respond. Creation, on the other hand, is proactive. It is about stepping into the driver's seat of your life and saying, "This is where I am going, and nothing will stop me." Creation is built on vision and abundance. Instead of asking, "How do I get through this?" you begin asking, "What do I want to build?" Instead of wondering how to please someone else, you begin to focus on how to design the future you deserve. This shift does not happen overnight, but it begins with awareness of your thought patterns. Pay attention to how often your thoughts revolve around avoiding pain or conflict, and then start redirecting those thoughts toward what you actually want. At first, it may feel unfamiliar, even uncomfortable, because your mind has been trained for so long to anticipate someone else's behavior. But every time you catch yourself thinking in survival mode, you have an opportunity to choose differently. You can remind yourself that your life is not limited to what others allow. You can remind yourself that your energy can be invested in building, not just in defending. When you move into creation mode, you reclaim your imagination. You start to picture a future where your days are not ruled by tension, but by peace. You begin to dream again about what you want, not just what you fear. The act of imagining is powerful because the mind cannot distinguish vividly imagined experiences from real ones. This is why creation is not just about hope. It is about rewiring your brain to see possibilities instead of limitations. The more you hold a vision of the future you want, the more your thoughts, emotions, and actions begin to align with that vision. Creation also requires responsibility, and that is where many people hesitate. In survival mode, responsibility feels small. You are only responsible for making it through the day. In creation mode, responsibility becomes larger because you are choosing to take ownership of your life. This can feel daunting, but it is also liberating. Instead of being at the mercy of someone else's moods, you begin to make decisions from your own values. Instead of waiting for permission to grow, you give yourself that permission. And every choice you make reinforces the reality that you are no longer trapped in reaction. You are stepping into action. There is immense power in recognizing that you are not here to survive your past. You are here to design your future. Survival may have taught you resilience, but creation will teach you freedom. Creation allows you to set goals that excite you, to pursue passions that light you up, to build relationships that nurture rather than drain you. It shifts your focus from what you are escaping to what you are becoming. And the more energy you direct toward this future, the less influence the narcissist holds, because their power is rooted in keeping you stuck in fear and reaction. The moment you step into creation, you break their grip. Creation is also about building new patterns. If survival conditioned you to silence your needs, creation teaches you to express them. If survival made you shrink to avoid attention, creation teaches you to expand without apology. If survival kept you tied to old wounds, creation teaches you to heal and use those wounds as wisdom. Each new pattern reinforces the mindset of creation, and slowly, the life you once thought was impossible begins to take shape. When you fully embrace creation, your energy changes. You wake up with purpose instead of dread. You approach challenges with curiosity instead of fear. You begin to see setbacks not as proof that you cannot succeed, but as opportunities to learn and grow. This energy is magnetic because it comes from a place of authenticity. You are no longer running from the past. You are walking toward the future. You no longer see yourself as a survivor alone. You begin to see yourself as a creator, an architect of a life that reflects who you truly are. This shift from survival to creation is one of the most powerful transformations a woman can experience. It does not erase the pain of the past, but it redefines it. The struggles you endured become fuel for the vision you are building. The fears that once controlled you become reminders of how far you have come. The chains that once held you back become evidence of the strength you carry. And with every step forward, you prove not only to yourself but to the world that you are no longer surviving someone else's story. You are writing your own. The future belongs to the one who dares to claim it. When you have been under the grip of a narcissist, it often feels as though your future has been stolen from you, as if every dream and every hope must be filtered through their control. They condition you to believe that your choices do not matter, that your vision is not valid, that your life must orbit around their needs. For a long time, this illusion can feel unbreakable because they weave it so carefully that you forget what it is like to imagine a future of your own. But the truth is, no one owns your future. It has always been yours, and it will always be yours. What shifts everything is the moment you begin to see that the strongest act of liberation is not in fighting for their approval, but in building a future so powerful and so full of purpose that they are no longer a factor in your path. A narcissist thrives on relevance. They want to be the center of your attention, the anchor of your decisions, the loudest voice in your mind. Even when they are absent, their presence lingers because you continue to measure yourself against the standard they created. This is why many find it difficult to move on. Not because the narcissist is still physically present, but because their voice echoes inside your thoughts. The way to silence that echo is not through revenge, not through proving them wrong, but through building something so meaningful that their voice fades into the background. When you focus on your future, when you decide to build instead of react, their grip loosens with every step you take forward. Your future does not begin tomorrow. It begins the moment you choose to own it. Too often, people wait for the perfect time, the right circumstances, or the ideal conditions to make changes. But the future is always shaped by the present. Every decision you make today, no matter how small, is a brick in the foundation of what is to come. When you choose to set boundaries, you are building your future. When you choose to speak your truth, you are building your future. When you choose to invest in your growth, in your education, in your healing, you are building your future. These small acts accumulate, and over time they create a reality that reflects strength instead of fear, clarity instead of confusion, freedom instead of captivity. There is a deep strength in realizing that the most powerful revenge is not to look back, but to move forward. A narcissist wants you stuck in the cycle, replaying conversations, questioning your worth, obsessing over their actions. This keeps you tethered to their world. But when you release that energy and redirect it into creating a life that excites you, you not only reclaim your power, but also remove their influence. You no longer live in reaction to what they did. You live in alignment with who you are becoming. That shift is far more powerful than any form of retaliation, because it demonstrates that their hold on you has ended. The future also requires vision. Without vision, you will drift. Without vision, the past will continue to pull you back. Vision gives you direction. It is the compass that keeps you aligned when old wounds try to resurface. Begin by asking yourself questions that may feel uncomfortable, but necessary. What do I want my life to look like 5 years from now? What kind of relationships do I want to build? What passions have I silenced that I now want to pursue? What legacy do I want to create? These questions ignite possibility, and possibility is the spark of transformation. The more vividly you imagine your future, the more powerfully you move toward it. It is important to recognize that your future cannot be shaped by the limitations others placed on you. A narcissist will always try to convince you that you are too much, too little, too needy, too independent, whatever fits the narrative that keeps you small. But the truth is, those limitations were never about you. They were about control. When you step into the truth of your own future, you break those limitations one by one. You begin to set goals that reflect your true capacity, not the shrunken version of yourself you were told to be. You begin to take risks that once felt impossible because you now trust your ability to succeed. You begin to embody the strength that was always there, waiting for the space to rise. The future you claim is not just about escaping the past. It is about redefining your identity beyond it. When you decide to focus on your own growth, your own healing, your own expansion, you send a message to yourself that you are worthy of more than survival. You begin to walk with confidence not because someone else approves, but because you approve of yourself. This self-approval is the soil in which your future grows. And as it grows, you discover that the life you once dreamed of is not only possible, but inevitable when you consistently invest in it. A strong woman does not need to announce her strength for the world to see it. Her strength is evident in the way she envisions her future and then steps boldly into it. She knows that her worth is not tied to the scars of her past, but to the choices she makes each day. She knows that the narcissist's greatest fear is her refusal to remain stuck in their shadow. And she knows that the most powerful act of defiance is not bitterness, but brilliance, not anger, but achievement. Not silence, but the sound of her footsteps moving steadily forward into the life she chooses. The future belongs to the woman who no longer waits for someone to hand her permission. It belongs to the woman who realizes that her dreams are valid, her goals are worthy, her vision is necessary. It belongs to the woman who has the courage to see beyond her wounds and the discipline to keep moving even when the path feels uncertain. Every step she takes into her future reclaims another piece of her power. Every dream she pursues silences another lie that was spoken over her. Every boundary she enforces creates more room for growth, joy, and peace. And as she continues to walk toward her future with strength and clarity, she becomes the living proof that no one, no matter how manipulative or controlling, can take away what was always hers to create.